Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep, into a topic that's a little bit creepy. We're talking about propaganda.
Hmm.
We've got some excerpts from this multi-part audio file, and it really goes into the history of propaganda, how it's been used and how it still impacts us today, really,
Yeah.
past and present. So where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, one thing that really jumped out at me from these audio files was how they talk about how language can be used to manipulate people.
Okay.
It's like the words themselves can be tools.
Wow. Yeah.
For example, the word homeland seems pretty harmless, right? Patriotic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use it. I never thought twice about it.
Right. But these excerpts point out that the term homeland actually comes from the Communist Manifesto.
Oh, wow. See, that's kind of surprising, right?
Mhm.
Like you hear that and you're like, huh, I never knew that. It really makes you think about how certain words or concepts can be, twisted or used in different ways for different purposes. But how does that tie into this bigger idea of propaganda?
Well, it shows how language can be chosen to make people feel a certain way.
Okay.
Like by connecting homeland to patriotism, you suddenly make it easier to get people to support something,
Right.
even if it might not be good for them.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about, straight up lies. It's about like framing the story in a way that changes how people see things.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really interesting.
And these excerpts, they trace like a direct line from this organization called Wellington House. It's basically a British propaganda machine during World War One.
Okay.
And then they connect that to the Tavistock Institute, which, believe it or not, is still around today.
Wait a minute, hold on. So you're telling me there's this group, this organization that's been like messing with public opinion for over a century.
That's what these excerpts are saying.
That's a little unnerving.
It is, and they had some pretty big names involved with them too.
And who?
Well, there was Lord Northcliffe. He was like a media mogul,
Right on.
controlled like a big chunk of the British press. Walter Lippmann, he was a journalist who literally wrote the book on public opinion.
Huh?
And then and then there's Edward Bernays. He's considered by a lot of people to be like the father of public relations.
Okay, so not exactly like household names, but it sounds like they had like a massive impact on how we see the world.
Yeah, they did.
So what were some of the tactics they used? Like how did they actually do this?
Well, during World War One, one of the main things they focused on was demonizing the enemy.
Right. Right. You gotta make them look bad so people are ready to fight, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. They needed to create this powerful story
Hmm.
that would get people, behind the war effort.
So they wanted to make the enemy seem like so scary that war seemed like the only answer.
Exactly. And they really went after Kaiser Wilhelm II.
Okay.
They painted him as this brutal tyrant, this mad dog who wanted to take over the world.
Oh, wow.
They spread all these stories about atrocities, a lot of them made up.
Really? Wow.
They used like really emotionally charged language.
Yeah.
And they even had like cartoons showing him as a monster.
So basically, they made him into a cartoon villain that was easy to hate.
Exactly.
But did it work? Like, did people actually believe all this?
It did. It did. They really bought into it. And there's this thing called the Bryce Report.
Okay.
We'll get into that a little bit more later. But
Yeah.
it played a big part in making people see Germany as the bad guy.
The Bryce Report. So is that something to do with Wellington House? It is, yeah. The report was put together by this historian, Viscount James Bryce.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be this factual account of all these terrible things the Germans were doing in Belgium.
Right.
But later on, people found out that a lot of the information in the report was exaggerated
Oh, really?
or even completely made up.
That's messed up. So they used this respected historian, this guy Bryce,
Hmm.
to make their propaganda seem legit.
Yep, that's exactly what they did.
Wow. That's kind of scary.
It is, yeah.
Makes you wonder how much of history is based on these kinds of things,
Mhm.
these lies and hidden agendas.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, are we still vulnerable to this kind of manipulation today?
I mean, are we really any different from people 100 years ago? Are we really any less likely to fall for emotional appeals or a good story?
That's a good question. And I think by understanding the tactics they used back then, it can help us be more careful about the information we see today.
Right. So if we understand how they did it then, we can kind of spot it happening now, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So what happened to Wellington House after World War One? Did they just like pack up and go home?
Not really. Some people say that Wellington House, it morphed.
Okay.
It turned into the Tavistock Institute.
Right. The one you said is still around today.
Yeah, and their focus shifted
Good.
to more subtle stuff,
Like, give me an example.
like social engineering.
Social engineering. What is it? Sounds like something out of like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, kind of does.
What does it actually mean?
Imagine shaping society itself,
Okay.
guiding how it changes and develops,
Wow.
and doing it in ways that most people don't even notice.
So not just controlling what people think,
Mm.
but how they act,
Mm.
what they care about, their whole view of the world.
Exactly. And to really understand how they do it, we need to look at some specific examples. But that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right. So social engineering.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I'm pretty intrigued by this. It sounds like something out of a conspiracy theory, but I'm willing to keep an open mind.
Right.
So where do we even start with something like this?
Well, it's important to remember that social engineering isn't like this one big plan
Yep.
with one specific goal. It's more like using a bunch of different techniques to influence different parts of society,
Mm.
kind of nudging it in a certain direction over time.
So what are some actual examples?
Like how does this social engineering actually happen?
Yeah, give me something concrete here.
Well, one example is opinion polls.
The opinion poll.
Yeah. We usually think of those as a way to see what people think, right?
Yeah.
But they can also be used to change what people think.
Oh, I see. So if you keep hearing that most people believe something,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not true, you might start to believe it too.
Right. It creates this feeling that everyone agrees,
Yeah.
even if they don't.
Right.
And this can be really effective when you're dealing with issues that are complicated,
Oh, wait.
or that make people feel strongly.
So by controlling the conversation around these issues,
Right.
they can influence how people think and feel.
Exactly.
Are there any examples of this that are connected to Tavistock?
Well, the excerpts mention a few areas where Tavistock's influences is suspected.
Oh, right.
For example, they talk about the normalization of the gay lifestyle,
Right.
the promotion of promiscuity and drug use,
Mhm.
and the undermining of the traditional family.
Hold on a second. Those are some pretty big claims.
Yeah.
Are you saying that Tavistock is directly responsible for those things happening in society?
I don't think it's about direct cause and effect. It's
Right.
more about understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The excerpts suggest that Tavistock's research and their methods were used to influence these trends.
So maybe they didn't like invent these trends,
Right.
but they helped to speed them up.
Yeah, I think that's a more nuanced way to look at it. It's about realizing that social change is complicated,
Mm.
and it's rarely just one group or one person causing it.
Right.
But I think understanding how these trends were shaped can help us be more critical of the information that we see today.
Okay, so if all of this is true,
Mm-hmm.
how did Tavistock get so much influence?
It's hard to believe that one organization could have that much power, right?
Yeah.
Well, the excerpts talk about something called the Invisible Army,
Okay.
which is supposedly all these people
Okay.
who were trained in Tavistock methods, and they're embedded in different parts of society,
Okay.
like the media, government, academia, even entertainment.
Okay, now that really sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Are you telling me there are like secret agents out there controlling everything?
It's definitely a provocative idea,
Uh-huh.
and whether or not you believe in a literal invisible army,
Mm-hmm.
I think it does raise an interesting question.
What's that?
How much influence do people in powerful positions have on the way society goes?
Right. Even if there isn't some coordinated effort,
Mm-hmm.
people with power can definitely influence what information gets out there
Right.
and how people see things. What about What about the media?
Mm-hmm.
What role do they play in all of this?
I mean, the media is probably the most powerful tool for social engineering.
Hmm.
It shapes how we understand the world.
Yep.
It influences our values.
Okay.
It even dictates what we talk about.
Right.
And the excerpts point to specific ways that the media can be used to manipulate public opinion.
Okay, like how? Give me an example. How could the media be used to, say, to make a certain behavior seem normal?
Well, imagine a popular TV show, right?
Hmm.
Where the characters are doing that behavior, and it's shown in a positive light.
Okay.
So if people see that over and over,
Yeah.
they might start to think that that behavior is okay
Right.
or even good.
Right. It's like it becomes normal just because you see it so much.
Right. It's about subtly changing what's considered normal through entertainment.
So it's not like they're telling you what to think.
Mhm.
It's more like they're creating an environment where certain ideas just become more accepted.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just fiction.
Okay.
Think about talk shows,
Right.
news programs,
Yeah.
even documentaries.
Yeah.
They all shape how we see the world.
So it's not just about what information they give you.
Mm.
It's about how
Right.
they present it,
Right.
what stories they choose to tell,
Mm-hmm.
who they let speak.
Exactly.
And that's where critical thinking is so important, right? Like,
Yeah.
we have to question the stories that we're being told.
Mm-hmm.
We have to think about other points of view
Right.
and be careful about people who act like they have all the answers.
Yeah. That's a good point.
This all makes me think back to that Bryce report we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if a respected historian can be used to spread lies,
Mm-hmm.
how can we trust anything?
Well, it's not about not trusting anything at all.
Okay.
It's about being careful.
Okay.
You know, look for evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the source's motives,
Okay.
and be aware of your own biases.
Man, this is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So if all these techniques are being used to shape society, who benefits from it?
Well, the excerpts mention some familiar names: the Committee of 300,
Okay.
multinational corporations,
Okay.
the military-industrial complex.
Okay. So basically, the people who already have power benefit the most from this social engineering stuff.
Yeah.
Man, it's starting to feel kind of hopeless.
Yeah.
Like if these forces are so strong
Mm-hmm.
and they're everywhere, can we really do anything about it?
That's a question we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
So-
We'll look at specific ways to recognize and resist manipulation,
Okay.
and we'll talk about how we can take back our own narratives,
Okay.
in a world that's full of information that's trying to control us.
Okay, so we've gotten pretty deep down this rabbit hole of propaganda and social engineering.
Yeah.
It's a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's fascinating to see how these tactics have been used
Mm-hmm.
throughout history.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of scary,
Yeah.
to think about how easily we can be influenced without even knowing it.
Right. It is unsettling, but I think that awareness is really the first step
Okay.
to resisting manipulation.
So if awareness is the first step, what's next?
Like, what can we actually do to push back against these forces?
Yeah, especially when it seems like they're everywhere,
Yeah.
like they're built into our society.
Right. Well, the excerpts, they offer a few suggestions. One of the most important is to develop critical thinking skills.
Okay, so like don't just accept the information you're given.
Right, exactly. Question it.
Okay.
Look for evidence. Be aware of your own biases.
Right. So it's not about like passively absorbing information.
Yeah.
It's about actively engaging with it.
Exactly. Question the source. Think about their motivations. Look
Yep.
for different perspectives.
It's kind of like that saying, right? If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Don't fall for easy answers or stories that just confirm what you already believe.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to challenge yourself, to be open to new information.
That's really important because we all have our own biases. We all have these preconceived notions, and it's easy to just gravitate towards the information that confirms those.
Right.
But then you end up in these echo chambers.
Right. Where you only hear what you want to hear.
Exactly.
And that just makes you more vulnerable.
Right.
So how do we break out of those echo chambers? It seems like we're constantly bombarded with information these days.
Right.
It's tough to know what to believe.
It is. Um, One way is to diversify your information sources.
Okay. So like don't just rely on one news outlet
Right.
or one social media platform.
Exactly. Look for different perspectives, even ones you disagree with,
Okay.
and try to understand where they're coming from.
That makes sense. Expose yourself to different viewpoints, challenge yourself to think critically about them. It's about broadening your horizons, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Not getting stuck in one way of thinking.
And remember that information is rarely neutral.
Okay.
Always be aware of the potential for bias in any source.
Okay, so that could be like a news article, a social media post,
Right.
even a scientific study.
Yeah. Ask yourself, who funded the research? What are their motivations? What's being left out of the story?
It sounds like it all comes down to being an active participant in this whole information world, right? Rather than just a passive consumer.
Exactly. Take control of your own information diet. Be selective about what you consume. And make a conscious effort to seek out, diverse and reliable sources.
Okay, so we've talked about critical thinking. We've talked about diversifying our information sources.
Right.
What else can we do to resist this manipulation?
Well, another key is to be aware of the emotional tactics that are often used
Okay.
in propaganda and social engineering.
Right, like those images we were talking about earlier of Kaiser Wilhelm as a mad dog.
Exactly. Strong emotional appeals, they can be very persuasive.
Yeah.
Especially when they tap into our fears, our anxieties, our desires.
Yeah.
So learn to recognize those tactics.
Okay.
And don't let your emotions cloud your judgment.
So like if you find yourself like getting really angry or really scared about something,
Right.
take a step back and ask yourself, like, is this reaction justified? Am I being manipulated here?
Exactly. Take a moment to analyze the situation rationally before you make any decisions or form any strong opinions.
This has been a real eye opener, to be honest with you. It's made me realize just how common these tactics are and how easily we can fall for them if we're not careful.
Right.
But is there any reason to be optimistic? Like, can we actually make a difference against all of this?
I think so. I mean, I think the fact that we're having this conversation is a positive sign. Awareness is growing. More and more people are starting to question the narratives that they're being fed. And the more we understand these tactics, the better equipped we are to resist them.
So it's not about being like cynical or giving up.
Yeah.
It's about being informed, right? It's about being empowered. It's about taking back control. Right. And shaping our own narratives in a world that's constantly trying to do it for us.
Well said. It's about recognizing that we're not just, passive consumers of information.
Right.
We're active participants in shaping our world.
And on that empowering note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive. I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a fascinating and at times challenging journey, through this world of propaganda and social engineering.
It's been a pleasure.
And for our listeners, I encourage you to keep exploring this topic. The more we learn about the forces that shape our world, the better equipped we are to navigate them and create a future that reflects our own values and aspirations.
Exactly.
And remember, the journey to understanding and resisting manipulation, it's an ongoing one. Stay curious, stay informed, and never stop questioning. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.